There are a lot of well-known and loved RPG Maker horror games out there, and even the ones re-released on Steam still have easy ways to get a hold of their original free versions, so you can experience them some way or another. Today though, we're talking about a game that is neither well-known nor particularly loved. Back in 2017, a strange new game was released on Steam for $2 called Kyo's Adventure. A friend gifted it to me, and I decided to play it on a now-defunct Twitch channel with a friend. And we were shocked at the poor translation, brutality, and also sexually suggestive art. I never picked the game up again after that, until now. This game resurfaced in my mind, and I decided to check the Steam reviews for this thing, and I couldn't find the page for it at all. I went to my library and searched for it, and there it was. I hadn't dreamed it up. It was not just delisted, but removed from Steam in 2022. The game is still playable if you already own it, and still has its community open. But it seems that some policy updates pushed the game off the platform. Most likely because of the sexualization of minors, but it's also possible the copyrighted references were an issue as well. When I checked YouTube to see if people talked about this game before or after it was removed from the one and only place you could buy it, there was next to nothing. There are a few videos that show a playthrough of the game, but very little talk of what this game actually is. The only Let's Play with traction I found was the one and only manly badass hero, which makes a lot of sense since that guy plays everything. I wouldn't call Kyo's Adventure strictly unknown, since there are a few videos that amass over 200,000 views, but it's certainly a lesser-known title that is nearly impossible to discover now. Because of that, I wanted to cover this outrageous game and make sure I didn't hallucinate the whole thing. And with that, let's get into it. When you open the game, you can see who made this. Here we have Spacelight Studio, who, as far as I can tell, made one game after this called Otaku Adventure. That one is still up on Steam and has positive reviews. Then on the next screen, we have two studios. Can't read the top one, but throwing it through a translator told me it's Chinese for meeting recording or meeting video. I couldn't find anything on them. And on the bottom here, we can of course see Music Audio Game Camp. And this is way too hard to find info on because put together these four words bring up a bunch of unrelated discussions about gaming music as a whole, or programs and camps for studying and improving musical skills. Lastly, we have this warning message. Events, characters, and organizations depicted in this fortunately are fictitious. Similarity to actual persons living or dead, locale to actual historical events is purely coincidental. Parts of this game may be considered violent or crude. His game contains scenes of explicit violence and gore, not appropriate for people with heart diseases. Okay, so this game is as dangerous as a roller coaster. Also yes, the English translation is pretty rough. I think for the most part the meaning gets across, but it's janky and never lets up. Can't get on their case too hard since it's not like I could have translated this game at all. Also, the second paragraph is cut off from both sides, probably something the team forgot to fix when putting in the English text. Now we land on the title screen proper, and for a game I haven't opened in about 7 years, it really hit me that I remembered the song that plays here quite well. This menu is pretty standard. Aside from starting and loading a game, you can view death screens and look at the game's credits, which shows you an interactable list of names of people who worked on the game. You can even click on some of them and go to their Weibo account, which looks like a Chinese social media site. The design for the title screen itself isn't anything out of the ordinary. The text used is a pixelated font, and the one the entire game uses, which matches the art style of the game. The title itself is solid red and dripping, clearly supposed to resemble blood, and the background is... well, I thought it was just shades of gray, and maybe I'm seeing things, but looking more closely, it might be a girl curled up with her head down. I brightened the image to get a better look. I see her knees are on the left, her head just above them, and her arm is wrapped around her legs. Which, if that's the case, she doesn't have a hand at the end of her arm, which could be because of shading, an artistic choice, or they somehow forgot. It could again be, though, that I'm seeing things. Regardless, the title screen does get across the tone of the game, which is to expect a dark and violent experience. The music box song in the background is juxtapositioned, attempting to create a feeling of unease, kind of like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in Dead Space, which you should check out if you've never seen that. When we start the game, Kyo introduces herself as a 16-year-old girl starting high school. She loves green tea ice cream and hates bitter cucumber because it's bitter. I get that. I hate sour grapes because they're sour. Aren't I special? Kyo's excited to start high school with her two friends, who she's meeting at McDonald's. Kyo's friends are Domini and Illusion. Domini is the more social and loud one, while Illusion acts as a calm voice of reason. Kyo goes to order a beef booger, a Coke, and potato chips when an earthquake hits. Kyo loses consciousness and wakes up in a small, dark room. Once I get control of Kyo, I interact with the floating panties and discover that, of course, this is how you save the game. Interacting with the painting in the room brings up the text, "Voice comes from door." The word voice is used pretty consistently when noise or sound would fit better. It's a quirk of the translation. The first proper room of the game is made of thin hallways. There's a sign to the left telling Kyo to give up her body, then a painting with a hole where the head and heart should be. Towards the right side is a paper saying there's no way out of the dungeon, and Kyo laments that she was just at a McDonald's. At the far north is a drawer with a picture of a real person with their face smeared out. Not sure who that's supposed to be, but probably somebody who made the game, or maybe an inspiration. Through the one door that's unlocked is a key and a moving spike wall. As somebody who's trying to see every death in the game, I throw Kyo immediately into it and get a taste of what's to come. The death screens are shockingly well done compared to the relatively simplistic sprites used throughout the game. I'm not sure if they intentionally held back because they wanted simpler sprites, but it really highlights the contrast with the actual drawings. Kyo looks the same across the game overs, but she does look different from the game's cover, which does not go for the same art style. And that's a shame, since the game over screens are more unique looking. The real bummer is what exactly they choose to depict like this, but we'll get there pretty soon here. As you would no doubt expect, there are no checkpoints in this game, so any deaths will kick you to the title screen, meaning you have to start from your last save. At the very least, saves are just generous enough that dying isn't usually too bad of a punishment. So I make my way back to the key, use it on the door in the same room, and now the game really sets its tone. Through the next door is Illusion, naked and in a guillotine. She says something about her head being important, and dies. Kyo's obviously distraught. Naturally, she comments on most of the terrible things that happen around her being awful, and I can't blame her for that. So Kyo takes Illusion's head, which requires a level of fortitude I can't even imagine, and keeps going. Of course, one room over is a naked unnamed girl that tells Kyo to use her heart, and then gets hit by Art's magic trick from hit film Terrifier. Kyo somehow brings herself to take the surely still warm heart out of the now bisected stranger. On the south side of this hall are a few optional rooms. This one has a poisonous gas trap that slowly kills Kyo, giving me the second death screen in the game. In this one, Kyo is suffocating and choking up blood, which is nothing too crazy. And next to that is a room with a desk and a piece of paper warning Kyo not to wander around. Naturally, I do exactly that, and spikes shoot out of the floor and impale Kyo to death. Okay, now it's too crazy. This really brings up an important question about this game. Did somebody on the team have a Goro fetish? At this point, there's a lot of gore, and it's all very excessive and done seemingly for shock value, and then in this death screen, we have an extremely unnecessary upskirt and a spike going right through her crotch. There's not really a way to confirm it, but based on what we've seen so far and what we will see, it seems to be a sexual thing. I'm not squeamish or anything. I've played a lot of violent games like Fear and Hunger, but in this title specifically, it feels very unnecessary. Anyway, at this point I check the gallery to track the deaths I got, and I have deaths 5, 6, and 7. I was worried that I somehow missed 4 deaths in the first 10 minutes of the game, but I pressed on, assuming the game had these listed in a weird order. The last room in this hallway is full of naked bodies of mutilated dead women. There are no items in here or anything, so I moved on. Going south brings Kyo back to the first hallway, allowing her to put Illusion's head and some rando's heart into the painting from earlier, unlocking the door next to it. Past this wall of roaches is a room with a pistol, some ammo, and a medkit. When I picked up the gun, Kyo expressed how unfamiliar she is with aim and shoot, and appreciated the value the gun brings for fighting. An interesting choice of words over self-defense. I open my inventory and see that the pistol and the ammo take up separate slots, and you can combine one into the other to reload the weapon. Through the next door is some sort of well-animated, imprisoned flesh monster. It squirms and pulsates and makes a gross squelching sound as it spawns some sort of disgusting flesh worm. Once again, I see something new and stand still until it kills me. These worms only deal 5 damage per hit, so it takes a while, but we get there. This one's quite a step down from the violence of the last death, thankfully, once we see what's about to happen instead of what already happened, as multiple flesh worms encroach on Kyo. Another death added to the gallery. Down this hall is an optional room with 2 worms and a bloodstain on the wall. When I touched it, Kyo was teleported to an all-white room with an all-white humanoid in it. This is a secret room. There are 11 of these throughout the game. They all house a weird character or characters that spout off some nonsense. This first one is called Uncle, and he welcomes you to the sperm garden. The whole room is apparently covered in sperm. How delightfully mature. Past this is a room of coffins with surprisingly little to interact with. There's one that's clearly out of place, and inside we figure out the unknown stuff is a shrink gun. I can't say I've actually seen anything like that in an RPG Maker game before. Even within Kyo's adventure itself, the item feels out of place. Checking its hint, which is basically just info, says it's a key shrinking gun specifically. Further in, there's a room with a save and some floor tiles that are clearly out of place. Standing on one of these gets Kyo impaled, meaning a game over. Past the door in here is a huge key, and you can imagine what the answer is to this. I shrink the key and backtrack a fair bit to use it on the one locked door left. In here is another save, which claims this room is called Exit. Up the stairs is a ghost chase, and dying here is pretty easy since the ghost kills you in one hit no matter what. The chase itself is fairly simple. There are boxes in your way that you need to push, and the ghost moves slowly but isn't stopped by anything. Only set of boxes that requires any thought is the last set, since it requires the most time to push the boxes into a way that'll let you through. Now we're on to the second area of the game, the library. It's a bit jarring, but the camera is backed up, making Kyo appear smaller and showing more of what's around her. Kyo's confused by the change of scenery, calling the dungeon stupid of all things, not terrible, not horrifying, but stupid. 2 steps in, a bookcase falls over, and that's horrible. 2 more steps in, an illusion's naked and bloody ghost appears, telling Kyo that Domini is still alive and needs to be saved. He also gives Kyo a cursed map, warning her not to look at it for too long. Before disappearing forever, Illusion throws in that being dead is suffering for no reason, and then gives control back to the player. The cursed map is extremely useful. It accurately points at every single thing in this section of the game. It seems like a weird choice to show you all this instead of letting you explore on your own, but even weirder is that the game doesn't do anything like this again. If you stare at the map for too long, what else could happen but you get hit by a random screamer? There's no in-game punishment for looking at the map, it's just about being a dick. But to save myself the pain of menuing to the map over and over after the scream, I manually closed and reopened the map whenever I wanted to look at it. The library itself is actually pretty empty, but there is an injured guy laying on the ground. Kyo actually freaks out quite a bit because this is the only living person she's met who wasn't about to be killed by a contraption. The injured man confirms he experienced an earthquake as well, and says that time and space are chaotic, whatever that means, before succumbing to his wounds. Just past him is a little rat hole you can go into, and this leads to the second secret room. This one looks like some sort of monster in a cave, and he's lazy. While exploring, I run into the first zombie of the game and let it bite me until I die. The zombie death screen isn't as outright egregious as some of the others, but Kyo's clothes coming down to reveal her bra makes negative sense. I respawn and decide to look through other doors and find this room with a circular saw making its way across the wall, with no space to go around it. Naturally, I run right into it. Unsurprisingly, at this point, the death screen shows Kyo in half, with her intestines hanging out and a view up her skirt. I feel like I should have more to say, but I can only phrase my disdain for Guro of a minor so many times before I just want to move on. On the south end of the map is a small courtyard type of room with 3 zombies, a well that does nothing, a mechanically locked door, and a big gear. Back in the library, I found a blue book that says the way to keep enemies dead is to kill all of them in a singular room. This creates an interesting choice because it increases the commitment of shooting an enemy instead of dodging them. The game isn't stingy with ammo, but it's also not excessive. Considering how easy it is to save the game, I mostly opt for dodging enemies unless I feel like I don't have a choice. You also never spend enough time in one place to want to kill the enemies there for the most part. I make my way back to the hallway with the zombie, kill it, and end up in a room with 2 zombies and a key. The map shows where this key goes, so I head that way, and all there is a grandfather clock. Since it's missing a gear, I slot it in and get a gas mask that looks more like an astronaut's helmet. After reading the map again, I notice that this room with no items lists ammo near the table, and checking it out does actually give you hidden ammo. It's a weird choice to hide this here since, as far as I could tell, there isn't another item like this in the game. Back in the circular saw hall, I wait for it to pass by, and it briefly retreats into the wall before retracing its steps, allowing Kyo to slip by it. Beyond it is the first item box of the game, which, like Resident Evil, allows for item storage that persists across boxes throughout the game. I store a few things in there, grab the oxygen tank in the corner, and make my way to the southern area with the well and the locked door. Kyo suits up and is in a room full of poisonous gas. She's immune to it, but her getup only has enough air for 2 minutes. In this room, there are a lot of weird spirit-looking things with this aura around them. When Kyo gets close enough to them, they chase her down super quickly and can't be shaken off. They also deal a whopping 35 damage per hit, so death comes quick. The first time I see one, I run into it for the game over, but after that I kept dying to them trying to find a safe way through the room. After a few attempts, I remembered I have a gun and tried to clear a path. It takes 5 shots, and they start running at you when you open fire, but it can be done. Oh, and the game over is that these things burn a hole through Kyo's face. It's pretty gnarly since you can see that her brain and her tongue are still there, but everything in between is just gone. Kind of reminds me of something else. After that is a series of spike walls that you have to wait for the right cycle on to get past. Then lastly is a room full of zombies. They all start in the center of the room and they're slow, so it's simple to run by the walls and get past them, leaving Kyo to unlock the door using the panel next to it. And the puzzle is labeling the button layouts of different console controllers. The game doesn't even use a slight offshoot either, it just full on says Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox in that order. It's a weird choice for a puzzle, but solving it unlocks the door in this room and grants the library key, allowing Kiyo to move on to the next section of the game. Immediately the tone shifts because the library opens up to a city. Kiyo never comments on whether it's the same one she lives in or near, but she wonders about if her home is okay, so maybe. Everything out here is ruined. All the buildings are still standing, but many of them have broken windows, damaged architecture, and sometimes even cars rammed into them. It seems a bit extreme, but earthquakes can be unbelievably devastating. Before even a minute out here though, Kiyo is surrounded by zombies from both sides. She panics, but the screen cuts to black, and when we fade back in, we see her hero, Bobo. Kiyo, desperate to talk to a living person, tells him that she feels hopeless and wants to contact her friend. Bobo rolls over those feelings and invites her into his apartment, almost like he has ulterior motives. Kiyo immediately accepts as a tired and hungry child and follows him inside. Bobo lives on the 3rd floor, but you can get into a room on the 2nd floor here and find a new item and a shotgun, just sitting on the table of the abandoned apartment. The back room has some shotgun ammo as well as the dead owner of the apartment. Before I can leave, a single zombie spawns in and gets me since I was so close to the door. Once inside his very spacious apartment, Bobo wastes no time giving Kiyo a cup of tea with sleeping drugs in it. She passes out, and Bobo gets thirsty and drinks from the same cup that Kiyo somehow didn't spill everywhere, also passing out despite making that sleepy cocktail and watching Kiyo fall asleep after drinking it. At least he recognizes he's stupid for that, but what in the world is this writing? None of this is meant to be taken seriously, but even so, this is ridiculous. Bobo ties up Kiyo's hands and passes out. Then the game cuts to Dominique. She's naked and strapped down to a metal table, where a wooden bat is attached to a machine that is repeatedly beating her torso. Kiyo wakes up, realizing she had dreamt that. She calls Bobo a shit, and has the worrying realization that she doesn't know if he assaulted her in her sleep, but blows off the idea. With her things locked up and her hands tied behind her back, Kiyo makes her way around the apartment, hoping to get her stuff back and leave before Bobo wakes up. Bobo has a typical loser bedroom with a Wii on the floor, tissues next to his computer, and hentai figurines and magazines. Bobo's living room has nothing of interest, and neither does his bathroom, aside from Kiyo saying that she's not in the mood to defecate or urinate if you check the toilet. In the kitchen, Kiyo sees the various body parts on the kitchen counter that Bobo left out, realizing that he's a cannibal. I tried to use the knives on the counter to free Kiyo, but maybe they're too far away from the ledge for her. The next best option is what appears to be a broken plate. Kiyo frees herself and grabs the key. It's sitting in the pool of blood next to 2 heads in the fridge. Right then, lightning strikes, and Bobo must be yelling as loudly as he can because Kiyo hears him talk about how loud the thunder was, and that since Kiyo ran out of the room, he's going to find her and kill her. And also he has the only key out of the apartment. Now the living room is a little stealth section with Bobo following a set track looking for you. I choose to instantly get caught, and this game over shows Bobo pinning Kiyo down. He seems to have stabbed her a few times and brandishes his bloody knife. I don't know what's up with the knife though, it's a weird shape that would only make sense if he had stuck it into his own thigh, but surely not, right? Regardless, the right way to get through Bobo's patrol is to hide right next to him and sneak past when he turns around. Kiyo grabs her things, calls Bobo a shit again, and immediately pops a few caps in him. She tells him to go to hell and takes the key off of his body. Now Kiyo can explore the city properly. What I first notice is that, despite how lifeless the city is, there's constant noise in the background of cars honking. And it's not their alarms, it definitely sounds like somebody's mad during traffic. There's no sign of drivable cars or living people out here, so it seems like a big mistake to include that in the ambiance, but at this point I know I'm not here for a quality game. There isn't any kind of explanation for how a zombie outbreak this bad could have happened in less than a day, and Kiyo never tries to figure it out either. Maybe it's because time and space are chaotic. Now that Kiyo's out of the apartment, the game throws some optional content at me. There are plenty of buildings to go into that serve no purpose other than to surprise you, weird you out, or otherwise hide a secret room. The first building after Bobo's apartment has a massive room with a gigantic arm in it, for some reason. And if you can believe it, the next building has a cat, surrounded by fire, that asks you to wait 5 minutes if you want something to happen. I decide, yeah, I need to use the bathroom and grab a drink, so sure, I'll wait. And it turns out the cat isn't lying. This is the 3rd secret room of the game, and the 2nd one that I found. If these were equally spread out across the game, then this would take forever, but luckily, secret rooms will pick up the pace from here. This secret room has a streamer with a Pokeball on their desk. The design isn't altered at all from the official one, and Kiyo even calls it a Pokeball. Maybe this game really did get taken down for copyright reasons and not the sexualization of minors. When I looked at the power device in the corner, Kiyo spoke Chinese, so I used a translation app to see that she just says she doesn't know what that machine is. Right before I left the room, I wondered what would happen if I shot the character in here, and figured using one bullet wouldn't softlock me. I expected nothing to happen, but then As you can imagine, I went back to the other secret rooms to try this out, and I tried shooting everything in every sequential secret room, but none of them are programmed to die or interact with Kyo in any way aside from a bit of dialogue. I'm lucky I thought to do this here, because if I tried it anywhere else, nothing would have happened, and I would have tucked that thought away. But no, you can specifically kill the streamer and nobody else. We're not even done with this building yet, because one floor up is the one and only skeleton of the game, giving the friendly advice not to walk behind him. I considered saving, but remembered that the game tracks visits to secret rooms separately from save files, so I just went for it. The sword goes right through Kyo's eye and out the back of her dome, causing a game over. Now back on the main path, I go up the next screen and there's a huge airplane that crashed into the ground. The earthquake shouldn't have affected it, but maybe this zombie outbreak happened at the same time and one bit the pilot on this plane. Or again, it could be because time and space are chaotic. Who cares? There's a damaged bus on the road, and inside is the next secret room, which does not look like the inside of a bus at all. It also has 3 naked characters and a character that's just a person-sized dick. How quaint. None of the dialogue in here is interesting or explained by anybody. The placements and designs of these characters feels like it was some sort of Kickstarter reward, but there definitely wasn't one of those for Kyo's adventure. Maybe these are avatars for friends of the team, maybe they're references to games I haven't played, or maybe the designs are what came to the team's mind when they were trying to make this room. I have no way of knowing. Back on the streets, I get in the WhatsApp building. There's half a guy at the entry desk of this computer lab kind of place. There's nothing to grab in here, but there's a lit desktop in the corner that leads to another secret room. This one houses 11 characters, and none of them are naked, but one is a parking sign. Once again, these characters have nothing interesting to say aside from this guy with a more detailed face that says fuck you. The steak person loves EN, this fella loves Nintendo, and this fox loves beef. I also thought this one had something interesting to say. How about that? One building over is another waste of time with no items. There's a penguin design on the wall that earns an achievement, and reading the magazines in the far corner leads to another secret room. This time there are only 2 characters in it. The dog on the left calls the other guys an idiot, and the guy on the right will tell you a story. I ask about space, and he tells me that space wants to sleep with him. When I try to ask about the other story, he's adamant that I made my choice and won't tell me the other one. I can't say I expect it to be much different based on the first one anyway. When looking at this footage, I realized that I literally never entered the 7-Eleven building next to the G building. So I went back and replayed up to this point for it, and just like I thought, there's nothing in here. The G building is the way forward. This one has a unique look. There's a dying man called Hardy that talks about being mistrusted and forced into something. And just past him is what looks like the recording area for a podcast. You can actually interact with the mixer and start playing recorded audio that goes on for quite a while. There are also dead bodies, but those are always around. One of the bodies does, though, have a key that can be used on a hatch on the right side of the room leading underground. This little stretch of the sewers is home to some living abominations. They can't move or attack you, but they can definitely be killed if you choose to waste your ammunition. Kyo emerges from underground and makes her way east. During this very empty stretch of the game, there's a laundry machine you can hop in for another secret room. There's a girl in here this time, and she says she was fighting at school and was jailed in here. It seems to have worked out for her though, since she doesn't have to do homework, and unlike most of her school, she's alive. Past this, we once again see Dominique be tortured. This time, her head is forced underwater over and over. The game cuts back to Kyo, who seems to have seen the whole thing, but this time fully awake. Kyo's now on a red-brown background in front of a school. I tried to go back, and Kyo said in Chinese that she doesn't want to look back. I haven't mentioned it before, but after most major sections of the game, Kyo will not go back there, even if it's possible. It's a little weird to me that one is right here, considering there's another point of no return one screen later. And what could cause that but a massive amount of zombies? In front of the school gates, the player can choose to stay and fight, or hide inside the school. Staying to fight immediately cuts to the standard zombie game over screen. There was no attempt to animate Kyo's fight or even provide something different for fighting. Inside the school is a notice of Qiando getting into a fight and being punished for it, which, whoa, we saw that character. The school itself is actually pretty huge. It's a 3-story building with lots of rooms and tons of zombies. The main hall of each floor has quite a few, but if the zombies were an actual threat, I would have talked about them earlier. They're very slow, so unless one spawns close to a door, there isn't much to worry about. New area, new reason to explore it. Kyo enters this distorted classroom, and it looks like someone took all the sprites, stretched them out, and threw them back in. Strangely, nothing in the distorted room is tangible, even things that should be, like the desks and chairs. There's another stretched room, this time with Boy A, who has a deformed dome. He tells Kyo that there's a bug in the video game they live in, something Kyo is shocked to learn about. The boy insists that the world they live in is too ridiculous to be real, and that him and some others had searched for a bug that could remove them from the game. But it distorted the school and the students instead. Even so, the boy insists that there's a good bug behind the school in the nearby aquarium. Now we're really set loose into the school. The aquarium is accessed from the first floor supply closet connecting to the bathroom, which is naturally locked. Kyo goes looking for a student ID to get through and continue with the game. On the second floor, I first check this computer lab kind of room. In the back corner is a scrap of paper, and picking it up summons these fellas to crawl towards you. They kind of remind me of Peter from Lisa the Painful. The scrap of paper I found says 69 on it, which is surely half of a code, so for now I just keep it in mind. On the third floor, Kyo comes across a little bunny. The bunny promises supplies and heads off. I make her follow it, and she ends up in a room that's littered with skeletons and has more blood than floor. Of course, many bunnies close in on Kyo and leave us with a death screen that only shows Kyo's clothes. Going back to my last save, I check out the first floor more thoroughly. Women's room's lights turn off when you grab the medkit in there, meaning you have to navigate out blindly. The men's room has nothing, and there's a classroom with a half paper hidden in a desk. This one says 54 and finishes out the other piece of paper I found. I make my way to a computer I found that's looking for a password, and nothing happens. I double check and then try a few different combos of the numbers on the paper, but nothing. It took me longer than it should have, but I eventually realized that the bit of blood by the tear on the papers is supposed to be the halves of the number 1, meaning the code is actually 54169. I try this, and it works perfectly. This unlocks the digital gate on the third floor. I work my way back to the third floor, and don't go with the bunny this time, and head left. There's a small room with a glitched out girl and a boy that has been so decimated by the liquefy tool that he's out of bounds and as long as the room. There's also a piece of paper in this room showing off the playable section of the piano for later. The stretched girl talks about how everybody in the school knows Kyo is the protagonist of the game, and they're jealous of her free will and ability to go places. It's never explained, but surely the students here didn't know their world was a video game until they interacted with this bug, right? Heading up through the now unlocked gate leads to a door that can only be unlocked by spending 10 bullets. Inside it's another secret room, this time with a pair of people. The woman on the left shills her Weibo account, and the guy on the right doesn't think he's that fat, actually. Next to that room is the music room, with a piano and a paper describing what number is linked to what note, and a set of numbers describing what notes to hit in what order. This one sort of reminds me of that one piano puzzle in Silent Hill. Once I do that, the piano somehow spits out a student ID at me, and a Peter spawns in the room. At this point, it's time to leave the school, but first I'm going to die to a Peter and a monster doll thing. The Peters just pin Kyo down. No blood, all intimidation. And the doll things twist and pull off Kyo's head, which is a bit more showy. Beyond the door, locked by the student ID, is a ton of supplies. There's a load of ammo for both guns and a medkit. After collecting it all, I head through the broken window and somehow end up in a shower room kind of place. On the back wall is a disgusting fleshworm monster. I immediately let it ram into me until I die. The death screen for this one shows that this thing can melt people's skin off. It's appropriately horrifying. As for its attack pattern, all it does is sway back and forth and spit sometimes, but it has a lot of health and Kyo's movements aren't the sharpest. I wait for it to attack, bust out my shotgun, shoot it, and put the gun away and repeat 19 more times. When it dies, the fleshworm splits in two all the way down, revealing a way out through its body. Somehow, this leads out to the open air. There's a crashed train, a poorly drawn wire fence, and stairs in the dirt going down. But past all of these is the next hidden room. And this one is a girl named Stan. She talks about her Weibo account and wishes Kyo a good day. Kyo says that she's a fan of hers and gets a photo of Godness. The menu sprite for it doesn't show anything, and trying to use it does nothing, so you can't see what makes it so God. You can't kill Stan, and even though it looks like she's waiting for a bus, it won't arrive, so that's a wrap on this room. Down the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon stairs is a long descent that magically leads directly into the aquarium. The first screen is pretty empty, but there are all these little box monsters that run into Kyo. They don't do damage, but they do slow her down. Thought about shooting them, but I wasn't sure how bad the final boss would be, so I opted not to shoot them and take the speed debuff. At the end of the hall is a vending machine with chips strewn around. Pick them up and use them, and they do nothing but provide some flavor text. At least Kyo seems to enjoy them, despite it all. I find another ender chest and decide to see if it has infinite space, and what you see is what you get. Filling it isn't realistic unless you're putting in infinitely respawning consumables like me, which is good game design. Moving deeper into the aquarium, there's a dead body bleeding into the fish tank, and of course, my personal favorite part of any aquarium, the sliding ice puzzle. Miraculously, the solution to this setup isn't hard, and it's easy to pick back up in the middle, so you don't need to retry from the beginning or spend time getting your bearings. This room is the singularly best designed room in Kyo's adventure. Past the ice is what else but a skinless baby-looking thing the size of a house. He tells Kyo that if she wants to find that helpful bug, she needs to shoot the wall from the 6th tile from the left, then the 4th, then come back to him. After doing that and talking to him again, he says nothing was supposed to happen, but Kyo should try touching the wall 8 tiles from the left edge of the room. Now I finally made it to the home stretch. Kyo lands in the room where Domini was getting bludgeoned with a bat, then the room where she was intermittently drowned, and finally the room where she is now. Still naked, she's stuck in some sort of contraption. Before Dominique can say anything, her torso is twisted 360 degrees and separated from her lower half. No sound effects accompany this action at all. For some reason, Dominique knows about the game bug and tells Kyo to go talk to it, hoping it can help them both. Looks like Kyo's made her way into the game's code, since the next room is a giant humming blue screen. Then there's a functioning desktop that just failed a game of Minesweeper. Following that is a very similar desktop, but this one is making its way to the default games folder. The last room of the game before the final boss is a buggy mess. There's a lot of ammo to pick up, one last chest, and a save. Using all of those for the optimal loadout, I move on to see just how bad this is going to get. The final boss is a simple, pure white humanoid-shaped creature with a red jacket and no pants named Boss. Boss says he's here because games should have a final boss, and that junior players could never make it to him because the game is just too hard and they're just too impatient. Clearly, games this decade are just too simple and reward spending enough time on them. He ends up saying that this is an old style of game, so I'll have to listen to his speech every time I die. I didn't expect the message of this game to be a kids these days type of complaint, but here we are. It also sounds like he's shifting the blame, so if you say you don't like the game, it's because you need to get good and it's not the game's fault. Boss's attack pattern isn't bad to start out with. The floor will randomize itself into a pattern, and only the green tiles are safe. He has a blue aura that makes him bulletproof, and by stepping on all four corners of this room, his shield will go down, making him vulnerable. I only used the pistol in this fight because I saw there's an achievement for beating the final boss only using the pistol, which I was going for. I'm no stranger to getting all the achievements in a game I don't like, but I wasn't willing to go all the way for Kyo's adventure, just most of the way. This fight is annoyingly long, as the randomized tile sets stop you from running laps around the room. It's safe to move while the tiles are being shuffled, and you have a bit of time to move off of a bad one once the pattern is set, but once it's up, all you can do is sit and wait for the pattern to disappear to keep moving. After taking enough damage, Boss will start to move back and forth on his little stage, rotating his body while his head remains still. Now to be optimal, I have to wait to hit the last corner switch until I can actually catch up to him and shoot him. The floor patterns haven't changed at all, so the only thing Boss's movements do is further delay the fight. To nobody's surprise, after being shot enough, he says he'll use his real power and swaps his color palette and moveset. No more killer tiles, it's now time for killer beams. Boss now follows Kyo's movements. He'll stop for a second to fire a beam from one hand and keep moving. The first time I get his shield down, I take a moment to shoot him and move, but then he gets me with the big beam, ending my first attempt at the fight. This nets me a death screen that looks like when Buzz dies at the beginning of Toy Story 2, but with actual blood. Now that there's no tension, I decide to see what the bad tiles in his first phase do. The red tiles pierce you through with spikes, the purple tiles impale you through the eye, and the blue tiles crush you with a rock, which is the last death screen I needed to complete the collection. This one borders on funny with just how matter of the fact it is. Like, yeah, she sure did get crushed by that boulder. Unfortunately, there's nothing else of note for Phase 1, so every time I die, I just have to go through it all again for another try at Phase 2. The only challenge comes from the stiff movement in the game. You can't move diagonally, which isn't that uncommon, but the game doesn't update the direction you're moving if you press an additional arrow on the keypad. Maybe I'm just weird for playing like that, but it felt wrong that I had to actively let go of the direction I was going to pick a new one, and not in the cool PS1 tank controls kind of way. So attempt 2, I'm doing okay, and then I get blasted in the corner. That's on me. 2 minutes later, I'm back again, and I try to figure out the timing and pattern of Boss's beams. I also avoid cornering myself by staying away from the switches if it's been a bit since his last blast. I also count it out, and he does the mouth laser after 3 regular hand beams, but the hand itself is random. Using that info, I play patiently to avoid getting caught in an unwinnable situation. I never walk vertically for too long since I won't know if he's about to fire once he's caught up to me and stopped moving, and I don't drop his shield if I need to play defensive. I'm constantly putting my gun up and down to shoot and dodge as I need to, and reloading in the menu whenever I think about it. I almost died here, but I am simply better. After persisting through the slog of lasers, I finally beat Boss. Since he understands his role as the final boss of the game, because there needs to be one, he congratulates Kyo for winning, and then blows up. So what's the ending to a game like this? It's simple. Kyo walks into the light and ends up on a beach. Kyo wonders if she's left the game. A disembodied voice tells her she hasn't, and not to worry about who the voice belongs to. Kyo learns that the rumors of a bug that could save her were fake, and she talks to the voice about her inescapable destiny. She was always going to experience these events this way because she's a character in a game. Kyo understandably breaks down in this moment at how unfair her life is and the state of the game that she's in. She wishes to see her 2 friends again, and the voice says she'll be disappointed, but complies. Illusion and Dominique spawn in, whole and fully dressed thankfully, before gliding to the center of the screen. Hilariously, the game acknowledges this and says it's because they didn't make walk cycles for either character, and then the credits roll in. The special thanks section is pretty large, and I can't read most of these names, but I get the feeling that this is the list of characters from the secret rooms. Strangely enough, this ending reminds me of Conker's Bad Fur Day, which I haven't thought about in ages. That game ends with Conker talking to a software engineer to solve his immediate problem, but he forgets to ask for his girlfriend to come back to life, and he's stuck in a world that he hates with people he hates. For better and worse, the programmer in Conker could solve his problems, but Kyo is left in a ruined world with nothing. Considering the meta plot of the game, who's to say Kyo doesn't simply stop existing after credits roll, her game having come to its end? Remember those secret rooms? There are 2 left that I skipped over, and that's because I looked them up after beating the game. The penultimate secret room is by the giant skinless baby. If you shoot the glass, he gets upset with you, but tells you a secret. Touch the wall from the 17th tile from the left. I don't feel like counting, so I ran my head into the wall and get it on literally the first try. Inside this secret room is a guy called Light, who's wearing a funny hat. Kyo calls him handsome, and then tries getting a response out of him, thinking he's cool, and then that he's shy. Light speaks up and yells at Kyo for interrupting him since he's hard at work on programming the game right now. Light brings up that his work is life or death for Kyo, and Kyo responds that she always dies, which has very unfortunate implications for what Kyo knows about her own experience in the game. Light says he's a programmer, so he doesn't eat enough, and he needs something spicy. If you grab the spicy chips at the top of the aquarium, you can give that to him for his blessing. The info for this item says it makes you much stronger. The last secret room is in the computer icon of the Minesweeper screen leading up to boss. Inside is Space, the producer for the game. He pontificates on the art of creation, wondering if people will play his game, if they'll like it, or if they'll drop it partway through. He thanks the player for getting this far and expresses his desire to update the game in the future, which to my knowledge never happened aside from some bug fixes. He doesn't talk about Light at all, which is strange since Light implied Space would say something about his outfit. And whoa hey, look at that, it's why the studio that made this is called Space Light. Anyway, I shoot this guy with a shotgun 6 times just to double check that I can't kill him, and I quit the game. And then I get back into the game because I want to see if that swirly poop actually increases your damage, and the only option is to try it on the final boss. You use the second phase of the final boss since there's less going on, and with the gift, it only takes 8 shots with the pistol to end it. At least, I think it was 8. With the iframes, I couldn't be completely certain. It's so weird how strong this item makes you since it seems to undercut the message of Boss complaining about games being too easy. But in his own game, there's an item that cuts his fight down to mere seconds. Kyo's Adventure is a messy game. The writing is bad and hand-wavy, the level design is hit or miss, and the insane levels of violence are unnecessary and crude, all made to derive shock value and have an innocent girl react to it all. The main reason I beat this game was because with it being impossible to legally obtain, this would offset many people from trying to experience it. And I wanted to document this obscene title no matter how much I do or don't like it. I know that Kyo's Adventure isn't the only game to torture a schoolgirl and kill her in all kinds of ways, but a game like Misao has a proper narrative and plays many of its ways to die as comedic. And the quick save feature promotes trying dumb things and seeing what happens. It also has a consistent level of quality in its level design and how it treats the characters and events of the game. The lack of sexualization of minors helps tremendously as well. In fact, the game actively condemns such very directly. So that's everything about Kyo's Adventure. If you made it this far, that means you probably liked the video, so why not leave a like and maybe subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.